Welcome to the Morgan Dialogues.
Yes, welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a while though, but definitely we always enjoy just coming back and sharing something from our thoughts, the way of thinking, and just something that we just, speak as we go throughout our day.
Yeah.
All right, today is a bit interesting though. It's been something we were thinking about and we went to something else and then we came back. But I really wanted us to share this. And it's going to be on the word
Propaganda.
Here's a question I have for you as you get going though. I want you to think about a strong belief that you hold true, something that you believe in, something that nobody can really talk to you about because you strongly hold that to be what you believe in. It doesn't matter. It could be that you're a Christian. Do you hold that true that I have the right belief? I believe in this. It could be the church that you attend. Do you believe that the church, my church is the true church and there is no other church? What is that belief? It could be your very school, the college you attend right now. My college is the college right now. I want you to think of that belief that you hold true to. And let's explore it at the end of the day. Anyway, let's get going.
All right, this is kind of inspired. That's a very deep question, babe. But we were inspired to talk about this from last month or two. We watched a movie called 1984.
Yes.
And maybe some of you recognize the title. It's a literary classic by George Orwell. And obviously there's been many adaptations of the book, but we watched the latest one, I think was 2006, somewhere in there. Needless to say, it was sort of an eerie, scary type of movie because it so far reflects what's happening in society today.
Yes.
And it's interesting because George Orwell wrote the book in 1948, but the title of the book is 1984. And much of what the book and the movies both portray we're seeing it play out sort of today.
Makes
in a sense,
sense.
he was kind of prophetic. So anyway, let's talk about what is propaganda.
So hold on, just before we go there. So basically, I believe that he looked at what happened in 1984 in 48.
Yes.
And then because the book was in 84, it is showing the similarities. And we could say how advanced these things are even going. So if we can look at our past, examine what happened then. In 84, you could say it applies. Can you imagine in 2025?
Right.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're going to the definition of propaganda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, because I wanted to know, where did this word come from? Because for the most part, at its core, propaganda is information that's spread to shape how people think or how they behave. And the word propaganda, this was so crazy to me. I didn't know, but it comes from Latin. In 1622, the Catholic Church set up a group called the Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, which means the Congregation for Propagating the Faith. And their job was to spread Catholic doctrine. That was the job of this congregation of propaganda. And so the word stuck, but over time, propaganda lost its religious vibe and started to refer to any effort to mold the public opinion.
What year was that again, please?
1622.
1622. You know, the first time I ever heard about the word propaganda was during Hitler's time frame. Actually,
It's a common era to point to for propaganda.
yes, but actually, I'm not sure if this was before or when, but there was this man who actually was the first man that allowed women to start smoking. At that time, women never smoked. Worse in public, that's no.
It was unheard of.
It was unheard of. But what he did, it then allowed and caused women to see it as a freedom. I don't know if that word's kind of women freedom. And when I saw what they did to push this narrative, and that's the whole idea behind, that's the aim of propaganda. When I did my research, it's all about persuading or influencing individuals to further an agenda. Doesn't matter what that agenda is.
Yeah, it could be a good or a bad agenda.
Doesn't matter. So just
Yeah.
like how you said, the catalysts, they
Yeah.
have their own agenda
That's
that
where it
they're
came from.
pushing.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
It is, because even how you mentioned about World War II, that's a very common example of propaganda, the most in terms of recent history, because they had like these war posters that was,
Yes.
you know, creating this imagery of, especially like the United States, about the draft. You know, Uncle Sam wants you. Like that was a very common poster, and they wanted to inspire Americans to have sort of this patriotism, like we need to go and rescue the world because our freedoms are at stake, right? So there's a lot of propaganda like in our faces, whether it was back then poster boards, but today it's even worse because of social media and the internet and the news. And so you have all these platforms and avenues now, even movies and TV shows. You have all these platforms now to really shape what people think and what they believe. I think a really good example of that is like the news, right? The news, I remember we were over Mom's one time, and like Neil and I don't watch the news. Like every now and then we may chime in, but we rarely do. But we were
Well, we watch the news, but it's based on what we want to watch. So we don't have a local station.
yeah, it's not like we're tuning in at the 5 o'clock news.
Yes.
Like
We
we're
don't
not
tune into
on
the 7 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock.
Yes, we
No.
may get updates and stuff on social media, but
that's
it's not like
okay.
we have a set time where it's like the news.
And like, oh my gosh, we need to make sure we watch the news before we. No.
Yeah. But when we were over at Mom's one time,
Yes.
we watched the news because Mom watches the news at a certain hour.
Yes.
So anyway, they were doing, it was all these different stories, and they were all negative for the most part. I mean, violence and all these things going on in the community or on the island. And I remember Neil said, "Have they reported anything good yet?" Because, and that's part of the propaganda. It's like they want to spread fear, so they just report on things that are just going to scare you.
And I love that. First of all, we have been living at this location since what? December,
Yeah, December.
last year? Would you say this is a violent era? I notice I didn't say community
Right.
era, because we have traveled left,
Yeah,
right, even this south, maybe not north, because that's the ocean.
Yeah.
But of all the places that we have traveled and we have walked a lot as well, would you say it's a violent place? Exactly. But that's the thing. That is
Yeah.
why I had to ask that question, because if we believe what is being said out there
Yeah.
and don't really look at things for yourself and open the door for yourself
Yeah.
and check out life. And mind you, I'm not saying that violence is not out there.
Right.
But it's not the norm. It's
Yes,
not the high
yes.
point. It's not every single day every community is going through certain things.
Yeah, I think that's because if you think about the news, even how you said how we go on our phones and we may check up things, a lot of propaganda is cherry picked. You know, like they pick and choose what they want to report on. They may not give you the full story, or they'll spin it like to fit their narrative. And so that's kind of how propaganda works. It's a cherry picking, because you can say there's violence everywhere, right? But then you can say there are also good areas as well, right? But if you're only getting fed one version of the story, it's propaganda, because now it's influencing how you think about the world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you see, that's so important. I remember when I used to watch the news now.
Yeah.
I remember there's a station that would bring over the news at a certain hour. And I guarantee you, like 60% of the time, this would happen. Let's say they're bringing over an accident, for example.
Yeah.
Say a simple accident. And they would bring it over at their hour, and I would see the accident, and I would like, oh my gosh, there's an accident. Oh my gosh. But the thing is that I would watch the news that will come a little bit later from a different station. Here's something I noticed. Well, first of all, here's the first station. 40% of the time they'll say this. Oh, by the way, later we'll give you a further update. Like they'll tell you a quick, oh, this breaking news, this happened.
Yeah.
They'll put it that way. So when they just give you a little piece, you're okay with it. But when I watch the news later,
Yeah.
not just I get the first person that they catch on the scene to say, hey, what really happened? Let's
Yeah.
bring this over.
Yeah.
But when I watch that in second newscast, they spoke to someone who is a witness, obviously who is involved. They may not be able to speak to them.
Yeah.
They speak to a witness. I notice they speak to, let's say, the police. And then at the end of the day, they try to come to a conclusion. I mean, I love watching that second station.
Yeah.
Why? Because they gave us a balanced view,
story.
a full story as to what happened. I remember, as I said, the first station would say later we'll tell you more. That's what they do in most cases. Because even when I watch the news that they bring now, today, without even saying those words for later, that's the type of bias sometimes that I see in their newscast.
The bias is key.
Yes.
Because if you guys don't know, America's like the land of propaganda, especially when it comes to our news and our media outlets. And we didn't know this for years. Like my family, we used to watch all the like the official editorial news stations. I won't mention them, but we considered that real news coverage. And then in 2016, when the administration changed and a different president came into office, all of a sudden he came up with the term fake news. And everyone's like, what is he talking about?
Fake news.
Fake news. And so he started talking about how these news stations were backed by the other political parties. They were getting paid and funded to feed this narrative. And it happens on both sides, right? We're not saying it's one or the other. But essentially what was being exposed is that these news stations were getting money from a politician and they wanted them to report good things about that political party. So people would say, oh, the other side is the devil and we should vote for them. And they fear-mongered us into voting a certain way. But like I said, by the time 2016 rolled around and fake news became the thing, all of a sudden it changed so much, because then you're like, wait, what? I remember watching a YouTube video where they put all the news stations, all the anchors, literally word for word.
I remember
saying the same thing.
Like that already.
It's like they were like a script they were reading.
Yes.
And you're just like, what?
It's
so
planned.
You read it.
That's how you know.
Yes,
I watched something like that already.
Yes, that is what propaganda is. It's very intentional. It's selective. Like they're very selective about what they're going to share with you. And most people take for granted that the people on the other side of the camera really care about the truth. But it's like, but when they're being bought, when they're sold out, they don't care about the truth. They're just going to say exactly what they're paid to do. And then you're taking for granted that they're telling you the truth.
But hold on. I like how you say that. Those that are bringing over the news don't really care about the truth. Well, in most cases, not all the time.
Not all the time.
Watch the flip to this now. Watch this. Do you think people love a gossip more than the truth? Those that consume
people prefer scandal.
Exactly. I remember there's a quote where they say that by the time the lie reaches around the world, the truth is still tying its lace.
Yes. Yeah.
The truth is still tying its lace while the gossip has traveled around the world. People, that's why, well, I won't even go there, but people love gossip. People prefer scandal. People prefer the news. So when you think about it, in a way, we ourselves are biased. So here's the thing. If these news personnel knew that they would have been caught, or people would be like, what are you doing? They would have stopped. But because we are the consumers who are consuming this and have no problem just gravitating towards it and, oh my God, let's share this. Oh my God, this is what happened, without taking a stop. If we were doing that, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have continued.
Right, because part of how they play into that is our emotions. They over-sensationalize things, like melodramatic, and it gets you emotional where you're not thinking about what's the truth anymore. You're just focused on, oh, I'm afraid, or you know, maybe you're feeling overly excited, you know, when your favorite team wins the Super Bowl, right? Everything is emotional. So when you're emotional, they're able to kind of twist it and make it look like it's true. You know, and I think that's really what it is. And also too, it's a constant repetition. Right. So propaganda repeats itself. It doesn't just show you one time. It's got to do it a few times over and over and over before you really start to believe it's true. So if they're saying this group of people hate this group of people and they keep saying it over and over and over again, if you're not one to stop and question that propaganda, you'll start to believe it.
You know, that reminds me of there's a comment that if I think it was when I first learned about propaganda years back,
Yeah.
and it said that if you repeat a lie enough, I think that's it. If you repeat a lie enough,
Yeah.
over time it becomes the truth.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's, you see, this goes to the scripture that says, there's a way that seemeth right unto a man,
Yeah.
but the end thereof leads to what? Death.
Death.
Why would the Bible warns us that there's a way that we may think, that we see, that seem what?
Right to us.
Well, it never said there's a way that seems
Kind of right.
Kinda
It
right.
makes some sense.
wrong. It says there's a way that seemeth right.
right.
So what we're trying to say is that the way that we see things may seem right. We may be defending certain things that is
Yes.
somewhat right.
Right.
We may be doing things that we think is right. But the Bible says there's a way that seems right, but it still leads us onto the path of death.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. And that, I feel like that's the part where we start to see what happened in the movie play out, because the more that it seems right to you, you start agreeing with it.
Yes.
Then those people will one day, the elite, the powers that be, whatever, will then show who they really are, but it's too late to go back on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now they've captured you, they've seduced you into believing their propaganda, and now when they have you where they need you, they'll take over and control, which is what essentially happened in the movie. You know, it was Big Brother versus this savior that was supposed to come and save the people. You know, and that's the thing with propaganda. It always poses things as a us versus them. It's just, I hate to see that it's happening in my country, because it does. Everything is us versus them, or them versus us. They're trying to divide, because when you do that, you can conquer people that are totally divided and are willing to fight and die on the heel of what they believe in, even if it's a lie. But that's what happened in the movie. The Big Brother entity essentially creates this us versus them mentalities, us versus the world. The world is evil and they're out to get you, and there's this war that just keeps playing over and over on the news. It was just, that movie is such a good example of how media is used to trick people into believing a reality that's not real. It's like a matrix almost. Like they create this artificial reality, and if you have on the blue glasses, that's what you see. You see exactly what they're feeding you, and no one stopped to question it, except when someone does stop to question it, like in the movie, the main character, they're challenged.
They're challenged.
And in some sense, they're almost putting their lives on the line. So yeah, it's like, it creates this us versus them. It keeps you from really asking questions. Because like propaganda could be good if you're promoting things like an anti-smoke campaign or don't do drugs. You know, we used to have that growing up. It was the DARE program. It's like, don't do drugs. That's good propaganda, right? But then it ends up flipping, and more so it's being, I think, used for evil more now than I think in the likes that I've ever seen.
Here's the evil. I want you to remember this. This is very important. There's a way that seemeth right unto a man.
Yeah.
Why am I saying this? I want you to say, a lot of persons, because I hear you were saying that this is a trend now, that no people
people are saying propaganda I'm not falling for.
Be careful of people thinking you cannot fall.
Yes.
I think,
yes.
I don't remember exactly, but there's a lot of persons who think that, oh, I can't be fooled, be careful.
Yes, yes.
I can't be deceived, be careful.
Good point, babe.
One of the worst things in life is to think that you know it all. All right, I can watch that I don't know, that program.
Yeah.
Why? Because I stand, I know what I believe in. I can. No, I'm not saying you cannot listen up opposing opinions.
Right.
But if there are some persons who are definitely going against what you believe.
Yeah.
So for example, let me give you an example. There are persons might say, oh, I know that church, for example, doesn't believe in the things that I do. But you know, I can just watch them, and then when I watch them, I can debate them later. Be careful.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing I realized. Deception is subtle.
It is.
As a matter of fact, there's this man, his name is Anton LaVey. I remember one time he mentioned that one of his, it's actually the
High priest?
high priest in the Satan church. I remember he said one time that the greatest deceiver out there is the one who you cannot tell. Let me say that again. He said, Anton LaVey, the greatest deceiver out there is the one who you cannot tell.
Yeah, is a deceiver.
Is a deceiver. So when I saw that immediately, that is why we're going to spend some time at the end to help us recognize how can we, it's not about a failed proof or
right,
ourselves.
propaganda proof yourself.
I don't believe there is no
yeah.
way.
We're all influenced in
We're
some way.
Why? Because as a Christian, I have my propaganda belief towards someone who is not.
Yeah.
Because I want to push my belief of what I stand for. So in some way, we all fall into it one way or the other.
Yeah.
But later, we're going to look at ways of how not to allow or to be able to, not prove, but to be able to identify when it's happening at least.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Exactly. And I think let's just get into that now, because I think part of it is being willing to suspend what you believe, even for a moment, to see if what the other person is saying is there some truth to it, right? Because it's not like outright denying what you believe, you know, and it's okay for your beliefs to be reinforced if there's a benefit for everyone, but at the same time, you should be willing to set it aside in pursuit of the truth, right? I feel like what's more important, my ego or the truth? What's more important, me being closed-minded and not being willing to hear, or the truth? And I think that's the most freeing part of it, is that all we care about is the truth. What is the truth? And I think there were a few things that came to mind about how to spot propaganda.
Go ahead.
The first thing is you ask yourself, who made this and why? So, you know, if there's a movie and the movie has themes of women's empowerment, for example, where they, you know, portray a woman being the superhero. And
so you're saying we know that, or we're saying?
I'm saying to ask yourself,
okay,
who made
Okay,
this?
very good.
Who made this film? You can look up interviews of the directors and executive producers. You can see the names behind these movies and ask yourself, who made this and why are they making it? What is the message that this movie is showing me? You know,
there is a message.
There's always a message. There is always a message. And then asking why, and then ask yourself what information is missing. Because a lot of news is one-sided. Like they will literally, on both sides, at least in America, on both sides, they will literally only share their part of what they want to share, their data, their statistics, their everything, their facts, right? Because fact checking is the thing now, right? But you have to say what information is missing. You know, is there another side to the story that maybe they're leaving out? You know, I don't believe everything I hear on the news. If I hear something, I want to dig a little deeper and see what's the other side saying too, and then form my own opinion.
May I say this based on that assumption there? I remember, we're here giving you an idea how to spot it out, how to have an idea when they're being biased.
Yeah.
I remember there are times when our station would have like polls. So first, the polls, surveys. And they have a poll, and they'll bring it out, and let's say they'll say, oh, this party is doing better for the next election. This party is going to be the one that people will vote for. But then again, here's the thing I want to ask. Did you know that certain stations defend certain political parties?
Right.
That is something you need to be able to recognize. So the question is, which party do you think they stand with?
Right.
Here's how you can tell. So for example, that person that brings a poll, he supports this party.
Yeah.
No, think about that.
So of course he's gonna, share the positive.
Think about that. If you, and is that, I don't see him in public, but when you do a little research, as I say, you realize this person supports this party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's always bringing up these polls.
Yeah.
These results,
Yeah.
what the society is saying. And here's a trick. When it comes to statistics and coming up with polls, they usually use, let's say, 1,000 persons.
Yeah.
Now the question is, where those 1,000 people come from?
Exactly.
Where they come from?
Yeah.
Maybe one or two come from the other side, but 900 that come from their side.
Yeah.
So that's another thing how you can easily have propaganda. So we have to be very mindful as it relates to that.
Because they can sway, they can interpret it in any way. I mean, think about how many interpretations of the Bible we have. And that interpretation supports their beliefs, even if those beliefs are not in alignment with Scripture.
Yes.
Because they cherry pick and they say, well, this Scripture supports it. But then when you look at the context of the Scripture, like not just that one verse, but the verses before, the verses after, in the context of the entire chapter, it gives you the true meaning. It's like, so with statistics and numbers and polls and stuff, like you said, you have to kind of have an eye of scrutiny when it comes to those things, because people can literally interpret results for to push whatever their agenda is. And then the last thing that I recommend is something that actually helped me is, how does that, what you're hearing, how is it making you feel? Because if it's making you feel angry, you got to check that anger. Because emotion is how they're able to seduce you. And you're able to be bent, your perspective is able to be bent because of your emotion. Emotions are very fleeting. They're unreliable. I mean, it's not to say that emotions are bad. That's how we express ourselves as humans. But if they control you, you can be controlled by anything. So if it makes you feel angry, ask yourself, why am I angry about this? What is it that's being said that's making me feel upset? Or if you're feeling emotional, sad, or proud, or very excited, like anytime you feel something when you're listening to the news, especially fear, that's a big one, you need to check in and just say, why are you feeling that way? And why is this news, hearing it makes you feel this way? Because I think really what's important in all of this is, we know that there's good and evil in the world, there's truth and lies, and we want to make sure we're falling for the truth and not allowing these lies to create realities where you don't even want to step outside your home because the news is painting this bleak picture that, I remember being in LA during some riots and times, they'll be like, oh yeah, the police they're hunting Black people. That's literally what the news was saying, like we're being hunted. So when I go out into my neighborhood, I'm walking down the street and I see a police car, there's a little bit of fear that comes over me, but then the police officer waves at me.
The same one that's supposed to be hunting us.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh. So
that way.
Yeah, it's like, well, he just waved at me.
Or maybe, it's that other one that's on.
Yeah, maybe it's the other one. You just don't know, but the thing is, these types of propaganda affects your relationship with people, with your officers, law enforcement, your leaders in your country, community members, teachers. I mean, it can literally make you hate a group of people just because they're cherry picking, so for every police officer that's gunned down somebody, how many of them are losing their lives protecting people? Can we give the same energy for those that are actually doing their jobs? That are protecting people, protecting their neighborhoods, giving up their lives. We don't hear about that, but we always hear about when a Black man was gunned down by the police. In some instances, maybe they weren't necessary, they happened, but what's the context of that?
What was the Black man
what got to that point? Why did it escalate to that point? I'll never forget when I finally started looking into these cases and looking at the details that the news leaves out purposely. Because all they know is if we just say this headline, everybody's going to lose their mind. Everybody's going to get emotional. And then you fall right into their trap. You fall right into what they want you to believe. So I think it's absolutely important to, feel how you feel about something, but then ask yourself, is there truth to what's being said? And don't just buy it for how they package it up and, put it out there.
The moment I stopped watching the news, my life changed. And it's not that I don't check on the social media, internet, YouTube. I don't check for what's happening around, whether in my country or I do, but not as often.
Yeah.
I don't allow what is said to dictate my own stance.
Yeah.
I say one of the aims of, one of the things that propaganda does, it helps to change your beliefs. And it messes with your subconscious.
Yeah.
And if you believe something and your subconscious is constantly thinking about something, it will affect what you do. So they're trying to work on our beliefs. So for example, I remember watching this. We're going to close off with some more pointers that I have, my pointers. I remember watching this show. It was named Focus. I watched it years ago, and I've never forgotten what that show taught me. Here's a scene in the movie that I really enjoyed. That never left my mind. These two persons, this couple, I'll just say couple, they are con artists. They are con artists. In fact, they did something, they won some loot, I'm going to call it loot,
Okay.
and they were carrying the loot to some location to, I don't know, I guess to share up the money at the time with the rest of people.
Yeah.
Let's say that's it. But on their way to that location, they stopped by at this. It's one of those American football games, and I think they were in the VIP lounge. And one of them, the male figure in that couple.
We watched this movie together.
The male figure, he saw these group of men, one especially.
The NFL players?
The
people in the
in
lounge.
the VIP lounge, just making some little bets and having little money involved and all of that. And all of a sudden, the male figure just got involved. But I think he probably lost, if I'm right. He lost like twice, three times. And the man was like...
Is it Will Smith in that movie?
Yes.
Okay.
And the man was like, don't you see you keep losing? Why you keep betting?
Yeah.
And the man, Will Smith, seemed so confident that, you know what? I'm going to bet my bag of money.
Yeah.
The girl was like, which bag of money? The same bag of money that we just won from doing all these whatsoever.
Yeah.
And Will Smith was so confident. I'm willing to... And here's what he said to the man. And he said to this, he's a Chinese-looking man, and Asian-looking, and he said to the Asian-looking guy, I remember they're in the VIP lounge, the football game is going on. He said to him, I want you to look down there on the football field where both sides are playing. Pick a player, pick a number, and tell me which number you choose. The Asian guy was like, what? What? No. That you can, there's no way you'll be able to see it. He said, as a matter of fact, here's what I want you to do. I don't even want you to write down the number. I want you to even think about the number until I believe that whatever number you tell me, when I reveal that number, you will agree and say, that's the number.
Yeah.
The man said, no, there's no way. How much money is in there? A lot of money.
Yeah.
The Asian guy said, there's no way you'll be able. Will Smith said, you know what? Here's how I'm going to twist this story. At that time, the female who was with Will Smith was like, what are you doing? This is our money. We can't be gambling our money. Will Smith said, you know what, Mr. Asian man? I want my friend here, the woman friend of mine, she's going to tell her what number you pick. That's when she was ready to leave the room.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you're getting me involved? That's crazy. But by that time, the men that were with the Asian guy, like his bodyguards, were like, lady, miss, you're not going anywhere. We have a deal, because they made that a deal. And she's going to tell the Asian is going to look down there, pick a number, and she's going to tell which number. Eventually, long story short, she said, all right, I have no choice. And the Asian man, looked down there, pick a number, turn around, start smiling, everything. And like, your time. She took her like a minute or two to make a decision. She was like, oh my gosh, I wonder which number.
Yeah.
Then she saw someone she knew on the field. You know who she saw? One of their same cronies. One of the same man was involved in their little schemes that they pull off. And that man had on a number.
Yeah.
And automatically she was looking and she's like, I think it's that number that one of my cronies is wearing.
Yeah.
And the Asian guy was like, no way. No way. He was like, you got the number.
Yeah.
Long story short, how did he really get the number? They won all that money, but it was all a plan. You know what happened? how they want the money, what really happened?
Wasn't it that they had, like, they went through a montage of scenes where this number kept appearing?
Yes.
Right? I think it was like the number 9, I think.
Whatever the
Whatever number it was, yeah.
Even the very music in the hotel room, they said that music, it chants us. Can you imagine music chants a certain number?
Yeah, beats, yeah.
They said even there was a truck that was passing.
And
it wasn't passing in his path, it was beside him.
Yeah.
But because it's in your, see that, subconscious?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My point is never think that you cannot be deceived by the enemy. Never once think that you're proof from being deceived by the enemy. You have this propaganda shield. You will never be deceived. You cannot be influenced or persuaded into a certain agenda. Never think. There is a way that seemeth what? Right to a man. So let's go back to what I'm saying. So here's a way that will help you. Question things.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Don't just take what people. Be the person that's not a leader, but be a. Not well, not a fan.
Like,
No, you must be a leader. Don't be a follower that just wait for someone to say
to
something
spoon feed you
and tell you what this means. But be a leader. And sometimes leaders are by themselves because they are going to think different from the rest of the person. And that's when I knew that maybe I'm thinking in the right direction. It's not when I think with the rest of persons. Sometimes those who are really truth, there's a very few people that, they say broad is the word to destruction.
Yeah, broad that leads to the way of destruction.
Narrow leads to life. That is powerful. That tells me that it's not what everybody else is thinking and what everybody else is saying and the direction that everybody else is going. Sometimes the truth is in the opposite direction.
Right, yeah. I also wanted to add to that in closing is be willing to ask yourself, what if I'm wrong about this? You know, because I think that's what it is that traps us into propaganda is we're not willing to, like you said, go against the grain. Okay, everybody's saying this, but how many, why, let me see what the few are saying. And then also asking, what if I'm wrong? What if what I'm hearing is right and I'm rejecting that? You know, I think as long as we're willing to be teachable and ask questions and also just imagine what if I'm wrong, you'll be safe from propaganda, from totally influencing your life. Yeah, we're all going to be affected by it, but it doesn't have to control your life. You can still be able to live independently with your own thoughts, with your own opinions, with your own ideas, without being a slave to the propaganda itself.
I love that.
Yeah.
What if I'm wrong?
What if I'm wrong?
That's I think that really sums it up.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the question I asked at the beginning now.
Yeah.
To conclude the talk.
Okay.
So remember the question I asked, is there a belief that you hold strong to, you hold true to, you stand by this, you believe that this is your church, your school, I don't know.
Your political affiliation.
Exactly, that is it. Where did you get that belief from?
Yeah.
Did you come up with that idea? Or did you hear someone else tell you that this is a true church, this is the right school, this party is the only true party, this, that, the agenda, whatever is happening? Who told you that?
Yeah. Who told you that?
You see, here's a challenge I want for you. And here's the beauty of just simply asking questions. And I love what you say. What if you're wrong? Oh my goodness. What if the church you're in is wrong? What if the God that you're serving is not the true God and you're... There are some things that we don't really have to do certain research on, but when it comes to certain decisions, it's important. You know the difference. So here's my challenge to you. I'm going to challenge you. That same belief that you hold true to. And this is one thing I know my wife admires about me. I will still talk to people although they have different beliefs. And here's why I do it. And here's a challenge. Here's why I do it and here's a challenge. Because I want to hear about their way of thinking.
Yeah.
I want to hear why do they think that way? And more so, where are they coming from? So here's my challenge here. Whatever your belief is, can you do some research on those who go against that belief?
Right.
Well, I never said do some research to concretize what you believe in.
Right.
I said, can you do some research?
Yeah.
Spend 20 minutes, try find one, two persons at least that go against your belief, against that college, that school, that church,
Yeah.
that belief that you have, a political affiliation, and hear what their views are
Yeah.
in terms of that belief that you feel strongly about.
Yeah. And I think with that, if you feel, wait a minute, if you have that check in your spirit where you're like, wait,
Why do they even
could
think
I be
this way?
believing the wrong thing? I think that is like the beginning of the truth opening up itself to you. Because that's the thing. I love what you said about who told you that. 'Cause I think that is the key. Because remember in the beginning, in Genesis, when God asked Adam and Eve, who told you you were naked?
Whoa, yes.
Who told you you were naked?
Surely not God.
Yeah, God didn't say it.
God didn't say that.
So and God knew that went against. Wait, how did they find out what happened? And I think when you feel that check in yourself, and it's gonna feel dreadful because it's like all I ever believed has been a lie. That's a hard thing to wrestle through, but guaranteed it is the beginning of the light now shining down in your life.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this very deep
Yes,
conversation about propaganda, and we hope that it was a blessing to you.
It was to me.
It was to me. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time on the Morgan Dialogues.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Lovely. Yeah. So you can session like that one.
Yay!
I love that. It's like you have all these plans, but God just allow you to say what needs to be said.
I think that was the key. When you said that, I was like, yes, who told you?
Yeah,
Who told you?
that's powerful.
Yeah, I think when you find out that you trace back that source of who told you, it will tell you everything you need to know about what you believe. If it's a lie or the truth. Yeah, well done.
It's a guy, me get that question there from,
Who told you?
No, man, no, not.
Oh.
But the question about what is it that you believe? And then you say at the end, just challenge yourself. Question it. God, 'cause here's what he said. What about those people who go against your belief? Do a research on those people.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what we want to do.
No, because we're afraid of finding out. What if I'm wrong?
I love how you come and just wrap up that at the end. I love how you come and wrap up that at the end.
Yeah.
God, that's the big picture. What if I'm wrong?
See, because that was one of the biggest shifts that happened in my life when I switched from Democrat to Republican or conservative, I'll put it that way. Because we just kept voting Democrat because that's just what the propaganda was brainwashing us to vote. We never stopped to ask why. Why do we vote Democrat? Why? And when God led me to vote opposite, I wrestled with that. I was like, but this is all I ever knew. But I didn't really even know that because it was just part of the culture. It's not like I ever made a independent decision say, oh, I'm going to vote Democrat. It was almost like hereditary. You vote Democrat. So yeah, it can be a world shaker for sure. Because everything you believe in was a lie. It is one of the hardest things. But again, it's a good thing when it happens.
Yes.
So.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I think we should have that in the bonus section of the video.
The bonus section? What you mean? Oh, like at the end, stay tuned till the end bonus? Or just like an extra scene?
It's an extra scene.